So, Kyla Davidson is one of our youth here at St. Luke's, and she went on the junior high mission trip over the summer. They went to Crown Point, New Mexico, to work with the Navajo people on the reservation there. And she said that this trip gave her the opportunity to connect with a different community that she wouldn't have otherwise connected with. It gave her the opportunity to serve others. It gave her the opportunity to hear the stories of and from the Navajo people. She even said it helped her find a sense of purpose in her life. This is a junior higher. I think it's safe to say that for Kyla, this was a mountaintop experience way up here. And she said that at the end of the trip, she didn't want it to end because she felt like she was just getting started. She wanted it to just keep going. And you've had experiences like this, right? I remember when Tammy, my wife, and I led our first marriage retreat here at St. Luke's. It was actually up in the mountains. And after the weekend was over, everyone had left, and we were sitting in that living room, and we said, man, we just got to keep doing this. We don't want this thing to end. We just got to keep creating the same experience. And the truth is, you all have had moments like these right here in this St. Luke's community. Whether it was a mission trip or a retreat or some sort of service project or a worship experience or a class or small group that you were a part of, an event. And it was profound for you. It was transformative because you changed. And you might have even had the sense that the world would change because of this. See, these mountaintop experiences and this wanting to hold on to them and wanting them to keep going and wanting them to last forever. This is all normal and natural and part of what it means to be human. I mean, think about it. Think about your most transformative, spiritually transformative moments. Didn't you want to hold on to them? Didn't you want them to last forever? So there's a story in the Gospels about Jesus going with some of his disciples up to the top of the mountain. And see, in Luke's Gospel, right before this story, you have another story. And it's the story of Jesus. He's off praying alone because in Luke's Gospel, before every major event, Jesus is praying alone. And then the disciples walk in and interrupt Jesus. And Jesus asks them, tell me, who do the crowds say that I am? In other words, what's the word about me on the street? And the disciples speak up. You know, Jesus, some people think you're John the Baptist. Others think you're the great prophet Elijah. And still others, they just think you're some sort of prophet of old. And then Jesus locks eyes with Peter. And he says, yes, but Peter, tell me, who do you say that I am? And Peter, without missing a beat, there's a reason he got the nickname Impetuous Peter or Impulsive Peter. He says and acts the first thing that's on his mind. He says, Jesus, you know me. You know that I know that you are the Christ, the Messiah, the one sent from God. And Jesus says, yeah, that's great, Peter, but shh, don't tell anyone because you don't yet understand. You will soon understand, but you don't yet understand. And in that same story, Jesus launches into this discourse and he says, if you truly want to follow me, you have to take up your cross daily. And for all those who want to save their life and find their life, they must first lose their life. And for all those who lose their life for my sake will find their life. It is the greatest Christian paradox. To find your life, you must lose your life. And then you get this story. Luke chapter 9, right after that story. About 8 days after Jesus said these things, he took Peter, John, and James and went up on a mountain to pray. He was praying. The appearance of his face changed, and his clothes flashed white like lightning. 2 men, Moses and Elijah, remember these are great prophets in their tradition. 2 men, Moses and Elijah, were talking with him. They were clothed with heavenly splendor and spoke about Jesus' departure, which he would achieve in Jerusalem. Peter and those with him were weighed down with sleep. But when they were fully awake, they saw his glory as well as the two men with him. Let's pause there for just a moment. In the biblical literature, in the Bible, when the writers wanted to tell the story about what God was up to in the world, they so often, and by so often I mean almost always, told the story of people sleeping and people waking up. They were waking up to what God was doing right in front of them. Waking up is always good. It is not always easy because sometimes we've been sleeping too long, and when we wake up we're groggy and we can't figure out what's happening, but it is always good. It is always life-changing. What was Peter's response? Next. Let me say this first. He woke up, what'd they see? Glory. Now, on the face of it, it just kind of looks like a hyper-religious term, doesn't it? God's glory. God's glory. What in the heck is God's glory? Remember this word. We've talked about it before. In the ancient Hebrew world, in the Old Testament, it has its roots in this word kavod, K-A-V-O-D. Do you remember it? We talked about this. In the Hebrew, it's actually KVD because they didn't have vowels in the ancient language. Now, kavod says they use this term, glory, to say, pay attention. This moment right here, right now, it has weight to it. Don't miss what's happening because this moment matters. Now, Peter's response, verse 33, very next verse. As the two men were about to leave Jesus, Peter said to him, Rabbi, it is good that we're here. You know what we should do? I just added that part, but I think Peter said that. You know what we should do? We should make 3 shelters. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. Isn't that interesting? Peter says, Jesus, things are so good. This is good. My life has been changed because of this. Isn't it good, Jesus? Jesus, you know what we ought to do? We ought to just move here. We ought to just start building some shelters, building some houses. Let's just stay on the mountain. It's good. Next verse. But Peter didn't know what he was saying. Peter was still speaking when a cloud overshadowed them. As they entered the cloud, they were overcome with awe. Then a voice from the cloud said, "This is my son, my chosen one. Listen to him." Even as the voice spoke, Jesus was found alone. They were speechless and at the time told no one what they had seen. End of story. Kind of. You see, this is where your Bible can get a bit misleading. Don't tweet that out. Ryan said the Bible's misleading. But seriously, this is where your Bible is misleading because if you flip through the pages or you're scrolling on your phone or your device, what the Bible did for you is, what the editors did is separate the stories and they put title headings above each story. And see, what they did with this one is they stopped the story there and then they started a new one. But see, I don't think you can understand this story if we don't understand the next story. And all we need is the first verse. Verse 37 of the next story, which is really part of this story. And it reads like this. The next day, when Jesus, Peter, John, and James had come down from the mountain, and do y'all see why that's funny? Because apparently Jesus said to Peter, when Peter said, "Come on, Jesus, let's just stay up here. Let's build houses up here." Peter, don't be dumb. We've got to get back down the mountain. What did they see when they got down the mountain? What was the glory, the kavod moment? A large crowd met them. Now, the fancy word for that first story of what happened on the mountaintop, the fancy word for this is the transfiguration. It's Jesus' identity being revealed. Something happened up there on that mountain. It was so profound that Peter wanted to stay there. Peter wanted to camp out there for good. But I think it raises a more interesting question for us, and that is, are the two events connected? What happened on the mountaintop and what was happening down below? Are the two events connected? Because in Luke's gospel, when Jesus and the disciples get down the mountain, they encounter profound human need. Is the transfiguration, whatever happened at the top of that mountain, connected to them encountering profound human need? In other words, did that experience up there give them exactly what they needed for what's next? My brothers and sisters, did that spiritually transformative moment, that moment of waking up, that mountaintop experience, did it give you exactly what you needed for what's next? I mean, do you see why that last verse, the first verse of the next story, is so important? I mean, you see why the next day matters? Because can you imagine if Jesus said to Peter, yeah, cool, Peter. Yeah, let's just stay here. Let's just pitch our tents here because it's good here, isn't it, Peter? Can you imagine what would have happened? Me neither. Because probably nothing would have happened. See, the next day shows us that the story keeps moving forward. Even when things are good, the story keeps progressing. The next day reveals to us that it's not all about us, is it? You see, when we want to stay up at the mountaintop experience and we just want to hang out there, well, at some level that becomes just about us. And if we come down the mountain and it's still about us and we're not seeing what's happening right in front of us, then at some level that's just about us. If we say, well, it was good to me, it changed me, and that's cool, I'm going to stay to myself now, then it's just about us. But see, when they came down the mountain, can you imagine what Jesus said to them? Peter, do you see this? I mean, Peter, look out at the people. This is why we had to come back down. And see, if you get nothing else from the life and ministry of Jesus, get this, that it was people that always mattered to Jesus. It was people. That's why when we get bogged down in discussions and arguments and debates about doctrine and dogma and who's in and who's out and who's right and who's wrong, we miss it. Because Jesus is like, yo, do y'all see the people? I mean, don't miss the thing that's happening right in front of you. You see, the invitation from Jesus in this story is, will you follow me down the mountain? Will you allow those mountaintop experiences to shape you and transform you? And will you take them into your life with you, into your neighborhood, your community, your world? Will you allow those mountaintop experiences, those waking up moments, to give you exactly what you need for what's next? And it is a communal question, so I ask you, my brothers and sisters of St. Luke's, will we allow those mountaintop experiences, those waking up moments, to give us exactly what we need for what's next? And so during the course of this series, you're going to hear us talk about words like grace, and courage, and wonder, and beyond, because in going through this process with this community of people, we believe that these are the things that are defining us, and not just defining like who we are right now, but they're the things that are pulling us forward, pulling us into what's next. And see, these are the things that when we embody them, we don't have to get caught up in that game, that endless cycle of searching and grasping and worrying about where it is and will we find it. And do we have to go over there somewhere to get it? There's a story told in the Jewish tradition. It's about a 200-year-old story. And it's a story about the rabbi from Krakow. And the rabbi falls asleep. And he enters into this most fantastic dream. I mean, one of those dreams that was just so real, and the image was just so vivid. And it was this image, this vision of a distant city that was many miles away from him. And in this city, there was a bridge. And under this bridge, there was treasure buried deep beneath the earth. And it was just so real and vivid. The second he became fully awake, he packed his bags, and he headed out on a journey towards a city that was many, many miles away. And he sees the bridge. And there's a river running below the bridge, and he goes down to that river, to the edges of the banks, and he's kind of hiding in the weeds. And he's looking, and he's waiting, and he's searching, like, where is this treasure? And in that moment, there was a police officer standing at the bridge. And he yells down, "Hey, you! What are you doing down there?" "Oh, me, nothing, I'm good." No, I've been watching you. What are you doing down there?" And the police officer approaches him. And the rabbi says, "You're never going to believe it. And I feel so stupid, but I just had this most amazing dream. And in this dream, I had the vision of a city that was many, many miles away, and there was this bridge, and underneath that bridge, there was a treasure buried deep beneath the earth." And he says, "Now I know it was all just a big waste." And the officer just belts out this belly laugh, starts laughing at the rabbi. And the officer says to the rabbi, "Seriously? You believe in dreams like that? If I believed in dreams like that, I would believe there was some treasure hidden under the bed of some rabbi living in Krakow." And he looks at the officer, and he says, "Thank you very much." And he makes his journey home. You see, the truth is, we can spend our entire lives searching and grasping and looking for the thing that is right in front of us. And it's been right in front of us the whole time.